much bigger threat to the men in blue. That's him! Kill the bastard with the video camera! Get him!
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Rogue Nation here again with you. Today we're going to be doing an interview with the pastor. You might have seen the video a couple days back. Broward County Sheriff's Office had gotten themselves into quite a pickle, jumping inside in this church dispute. Terrible behavior by the Broward County Sheriff's Office. Definitely want to redress them. The Deerfield Beach station, Captain Hofstein, just terrible behavior by these guys. We do have an interview with the pastor. We're going to get to that. And then he sent me some information with a lot of links as to like the backstory of this. This is all going to be in the description for you guys, so you can read it and check out the links if you want, so you guys can get a better handle on exactly what's going on here. But just incredible. One of the worst cases I've seen of ineptitude by the law enforcement agency. So without further ado, guys, we're going to get into the interview, and we'll see you around. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Jeremy Tatum, and I am the pastor at the church at Deerfield Beach.
Okay, excellent. And most people that are watching this have probably seen the video that I did on your story a couple of days ago, and if not, I'll include that link in the description. There'll also be a card that'll pop up here on the screen at the top that'll be able to link you to that story as well, folks. Now, I got a couple of questions right off the bat, Pastor Jeremy, and one is, how is the process of hiring you? How does that take place? Is there a board, or is there a board to the church, or something of that nature?
So yeah, the way that it all took place is there was an elder board, and it was a long process that began in December of 2021 and concluded in June. It was my start date of 2022. There was an interview process, questionnaire, several interviews with the pastor search committee, and then with the elders, and then there was a vote of the congregation, which there's multiple factors that went into that, and they wound up bringing me here with a guaranteeing me a 4-year commitment as the interim pastor, but being made permanent within that process.
Okay, so you were brought on as like as a temp, sort of like, I guess you could say, a substitute teacher or pastor in that sense, with the chance of making that permanent after the 4-year contract had expired.
Well, even in the middle of it, at any time. And,
okay, at any time they could decide that, hey, Pastor Jeremy is the guy for us. We want to keep him here.
Well, it would have been up to the congregation, and they required a 90% vote in the beginning, and I didn't get 90% because there was a distrust of the leadership that was in place, which those who didn't vote for me was the reason why is because they didn't trust the elders, and now they're some of my biggest supporters here. And I was also want to clarify too, even though there was an interim adjective, I guess, attached to that title of pastor, they made it clear in the pastor's employment agreement that the title or position of interim pastor would be treated no differently than the position of pastor as it pertains to the church bylaws. So which the significance of that says that, even though they brought me in as interim, I could not be removed without a vote of the church.
Without a vote of the church, right? And all this stuff is done by, like you said, church bylaws, 501c3. They have their bylaws. Who is it specifically that that owns the church? Like, I know no one person owns the church. Is and what I'm getting at here is there's some churches that have multiple churches, I guess you could say. You know,
Hmm.
there's some 501c3 corporation churches that have multiple churches. Is that the case there, or is the church at Deerfield Beach its own entity standing on its own?
Yes, the church is owned by the corporation, which is the Church at Deerfield Beach Incorporated.
Okay, and that's overseen, I'm guessing, like most 501c3s, by a board of directors, and those would be what considered the elders of the church.
It can be the elders would be a part of the board of directors.
Okay, but not
Yeah,
the whole board.
correct, correct.
Okay. All right. Because I want to get to the legal standing that these gentlemen have, or think they have, in order to do some of the stuff that they're trying to do. Now, obviously, they were considered elders, so they obviously are familiar with the church bylaws. Hopefully, right? That would be the hope.
They actually wrote them in the absence of a pastor. Their church went a year and a half without a pastor. And these men who were the elders when I got here were the ones who wrote the new bylaws in the absence of the leadership of a pastor.
Okay, so these guys even helped formulate the bylaws. Now, I know specifically about two of the elders, Tom Lund, and there was another one, Jack. I can't remember his last name.
Mhm.
How many elders of a church there do you have? How many people are considered elders at the church there?
When I came here, there were three,
There were
uh,
three.
mhm, besides
Okay,
myself.
and that included Tom and Jack.
Correct, correct.
Okay, and so after they left, I know from what I read that I guess Tom had resigned himself early on, and then the other gentleman had been voted out. I guess was the proper way to say that. So, and according to bylaws, their bylaws, at that point they should have no longer had access to the church. I mean, obviously, if they want to come as a regular member and you know do their worshiping and what have you not. But as far as like anything to do with the running of the church, the property, or anything of that nature, they were pretty much done with at that moment when uh, uh, Tom resigned and Jack got voted out. And even more so, I guess, when they filed that lawsuit, right? Because in the church bylaws, it specifically states you start a lawsuit against the church, you're obviously no longer a member, which obviously that makes sense.
Hmm.
And it should make sense to anybody, because when you have an entity like this and you're all operating within it, and you have these bylaws that regulate conduct, you have to go by what they say. And,
Hmm.
and you made it pretty clear that the only way to resolve issues within this church is to go through Christian arbitration. So, what I'm seeing and what I feel is happening is that these gentlemen know that that's the process they have to go through, but they're not volunteering to go, thinking that, oh, as long as I don't volunteer to go through arbitration, then there's really nothing that can be done, right? Because we know the court system can't do anything, because it's not a criminal matter; it's a civil matter as far as the leadership of the church goes, right? Now,
Correct.
as far as the ownership of the church goes, it's obvious it's a 501c3 corporation. The board of directors, as with all 501c3 corporations, pretty much owns and runs the facility. Runs the 501c3, be it a church or be it a food bank or be it whatever. Um, so it astounds me that the sheriff has thrown his hat into the ring here, to try to enforce property rights that, like he said, it's up in the air, right? It's being disputed.
Hmm.
So even while it's being disputed, the sheriffs have no power, right, to interject themselves into that situation. And even furthermore, them standing by and allowing destruction of property to happen. Like this story all the way around, just it just shocked me because even with, let's say, it's disputed. They don't know if you're the property owner. They don't know if Tom and Jack are the property owner. That doesn't allow them to stand by while property is damaged when
Hmm.
it's in dispute.
Hmm.
You can't, I can't say, hey, Jack, even though the property ownership's in dispute, why don't you go ahead and break a couple lamps that may or may not be yours? It hasn't been decided yet, but I'm going to allow you to break these things and break into these places, just because, you got this piece of paper from Sunbiz, which I want to say you guys have been doing great editing on your videos. It's been really concise. The story and everything really, keeps people involved, and
Hmm.
it doesn't leave much to be questioned on your side because you provide all the documentation and such. So, what was his reasoning? Did the chief, the captain there, Hofstein, I believe his name is, did he give any reasoning why the sheriff's department was involved? Um,
No, it really blew our minds as well. I don't know if you can tell from the video that we had posted, but the reason Tom Lund showed up that day was to fire me, try to fire me again, and have the police enforce it. Um, and and Hofstein goes on to admit that he's coming in the building. If he chooses to fire an employee, well, then we'll handle that from there. And he said that to me 3 times. When Lund showed up that morning and to the door, I said, Tom, you're trespassing. You're not coming in here. I'll talk to the sheriff's deputies, but you're not coming in here. I won't talk to you. And so then he stepped away. The deputies came in, and that was when they came in. And Hofstein was really the only one talking. Now, here's the whole another mind blowing thing to this. 4 weeks prior, Lund showed up with 2 sheriff's deputies from BSO who handled it completely the right way. Deputy House and Sergeant Patton, they told him that these papers that you have, they're meaningless. I could go make them online myself. Nothing's happening here today. These carry no weight. Hofstein shows up with the same documents that they came with 4 weeks prior, and it carried all the weight in the world. Um, Hofstein is not only is he the captain, but he is considered the chief of police in Deerfield Beach. Broward Sheriff's Office is made up of many different districts who each have their own captain / district chief, and he is it in Deerfield Beach. He shows up to this call, the highest ranking official in Deerfield Beach, along with his executive officer, the second highest ranking official in Deerfield Beach, along with another lieutenant, plus another deputy, to inject themselves into the business of a church to tell us who our elders are and that he is coming in here. And there's no explanation as to why, except for what we could hear on some of the security camera footage of Hofstein saying to Lund, "Well, I have to be careful what we say because my body cam is on now, and I don't want to do anything that would ruin the big picture for us." What the big picture that would include or involve the Broward Sheriff's Office or Hofstein personally, I do not know. I just go by what they've said or
right,
he said.
right, yeah, we saw all that, and I thought, again, I had the same observations that you did. The first deputies that came out handled it perfectly. The documentation that they were providing in no way, shape, or form gave them any kind of legal authority to be on the property, much less exert authority over the property, or you being an employee of the 501. Um, and then when Hallstein came back, it was automatically a red flag that the chief would come out to the situation. Right? I
Right.
I deal with police Not recently, but over the last 4 years, I've dealt with police interactions almost daily for the last 4 years, all over the country. And I could tell you one thing for sure: it's hard to even get an interview with the chief. It's hard to even get him, pegged down to even ask a question or two, much less have him out on calls, right? And so, and this was a call, right? Because Tom had to call and have them come out with him. So
Mhm.
it wasn't like they were just out golfing. Maybe they were, but out golfing, and he's like, "Hey, let's run over to the church and help me break in." So he had to call. He had to explain his situation, and then for the chief to be like, "Oh, wait a minute, that's something that I need to be involved with." That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Mhm.
Much less have, like you said, his second in command there and another lieutenant there. That seems like a lot of heavy hitters for
Mhm.
what is basically a civil matter,
Mhm.
and not even a civil matter, a church matter, right?
Right.
This is something that can't be decided in civil court, can't be decided in criminal court, although they should be criminally charged for breaking, property.
Mhm.
Even if they said at that time, even if the police said, "Hey, Tom, this is your property," that's not the way it works with a 501c3. It's never one person's personal property, right? So
Mhm.
no one, not one person of that entity can go around breaking stuff without the consent of the whole body, right? So even if all this plays out, let's say all this plays out in the court, and Christian arbitration says, yeah, these guys are the elders of the church, and they're allowed to be on the property and they're allowed to make these decisions. There's no way they're going to say that it's okay for them to break property of the corporation indiscriminately, just
Mhm.
taking doors off and battering windows and kicking in doors like that's not going to be okay, either way you slice it, because like you said, there's a board of directors. They're the ones that control the property. They're the ones that control the workings of the entity. um and I can't see them being behind, destroying their own property. Um so that's a weird, red flag there that sent me up and perked me up, when I was watching that the first time. Was like, why are all these heavy hitters there? Because I've audited in Deerfield Beach. I've been down there many times. I've been down to the city hall. I've been down to the police department. I've had quite a few interactions down there with
Mhm.
Deerfield Beach, um, and all the little burbs down there. So I'm well familiar with Broward County Sheriff. Um, I've got friends down there that audit down there as well. So we're very familiar with them and their tactics, and it's just hard for the top leadership to get out of the office, if you would. So that was a red flag to me. Also, the buddy buddy way that he was talking to him outside on the security camera, like you pointed out about the big picture for us. As far as I'm concerned, there is no us. There is no big picture for
Mhm.
you, right? You're there to basically settle a dispute, but you're not even supposed to be involved in, right? But let's say for reasons that you are allowed to be involved in, um, that's it. It's just a dispute. Can he come on the property? Can he not come on the property? There is no bigger picture than that call that you're working on there. I mean, unless Tom's offering them, eldership of the church if you help me, or I mean, there's all kinds of plays that could go into effect here, and I'm not sure what they are because I don't know the gentleman personally. But I think maybe I need to get somebody down there to keep an eye on these guys and see if maybe they're going out to lunch together somewhere,
Mhm.
or if they're playing golf or at the same country club, because it seems like a much overrated response, and not just those guys coming out there. The fact that they redacted their body cam footage, um, and we saw the redacted versions on your channel, or and seen what they were saying. And according to the law, you're not supposed to be able to redact stuff from the body cam footage unless it has to do with certain specific things, child crimes, sex crimes. If you're talking about like tactics that you would use in order to arrest a suspect or something like that, those are okay to redact. But when you're sitting there talking about how if you call 911, I'll show up,
Hmm.
there's no reason to redact that. Why would that be redacted?
Hmm.
Unless you're specifically, um, like you pointed out, flagging 911 calls and not responding, right? Because
Hmm.
you wouldn't want to have on camera that you said that you would respond and then now you're not responding, right? That looks hypocritical. So, I mean, that would be the only reason I would see to redact that specific portion of the body cam footage. Um, I mean, there's just so many red flags to me going up with the behavior of the sheriff's office. Now, are you in the sheriff's jurisdiction? Or are you in Deerfield Beach, or does Deerfield Beach not have a police department? It's just the sheriff.
It used to be Deerfield Beach had its own police department, and it was dismantled, and now it's contracted out, from what I understand, to BSO. And if you've been down here to the sheriff's office in Deerfield Beach, we're 3 blocks down the road.
Okay, so you're right by their office. All right.
Correct. Which doesn't, which shines more light on why it took 2 hours and 17 minutes to respond to a 911 call during an act of breaking and entering.
Yeah, I mean, what happens if something was really going down there? What happens if, let's say, there was God forbid, a crack addict who had walked into the church and was trying to pilfer,
Mhm.
Sunday's tithing, with a gun? I
Mhm.
mean, why would you
Well,
flag calls from a church? I mean, it just sounds bad. It looks bad all the way around on the Broward County Sheriff's Office. Um, this behavior. You were going to say something. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
well, no, that's okay. I was going to say I have, this was part of my employment agreement was I had a residence here on the property, and at the time, my daughter's, oldest daughter was home, and and this is the example that I used. I mean, him Hofstein coming in and forcing me to turn over keys to men who are no longer members of the church is one thing. There certainly should be some disciplinary action, for that. They had not been at the church for over 6 months. They had not had access to the property at all. And Hofstein's words to me was, "You either give him the keys, or he gets a locksmith out here to change the locks, and he'll give you a key." And so he left us with no choice. That's one thing. But to do as we found out when we were I was also in the midst of all of the 911 calls the day during the act of breaking and entering. I was on the phone with a sergeant with internal affairs, who was the one who told us, "You're well within your rights to change the locks. And if Lund comes back, call us. We will remove him and trespass him. And if he comes back again, he'll be arrested." And so we're on the phone with her as well. And then she's looking and she's telling us, "Oh no, he canceled the call. He can't do that. He can't pick and choose what calls to respond to." And when we had an interview with the major, his direct supervisor, a couple of days later, she notified us that he had not only canceled the call, but he had flagged our address so that any calls that came in that came in from this address would be directed to him. And so, which is what happened when my wife called 911. And they said, "Oh, well, there's already an officer involved. You need to call this number." She called the number. Who answers? Captain Adam Hofstein, who says, "Tell your husband, Jeremy Tatum, this is a civil matter and we will not get involved."
But they are involved.
Exactly.
What kind of logic is that? I'm not going to get involved, but here I stand while these guys break into your place. How are you not involved?
They're the absolute cause of what's going on here. Everything was a peaceful situation here. These men had no access to the property. They weren't trying to get access to the property until BSO came and coerced me to give them keys, and so they're the cause of all of this.
So let me ask you, Jeremy, what does the congregation think about all this? Because I noticed on some of your videos, like they were breaking in. It was Easter Sunday. I mean, what do the people at the church think about this, and what direction are they looking to go? Because I know you guys have probably talked about this, and discussed it. What do you guys are? Is the congregation like, oh, we should just let them back in, or are they like, no, we should definitely keep them out. We should fight this. What's the feeling there?
Yeah, the congregation is of one mind that they can't believe they're equally appalled at what's going on, and what they're doing to try to gain access here. And the church also understands this, is that we're, as being a church and being Christians, that we're in a spiritual battle here, and and this is activity that's taking place against the church, when the church is coming to a point now. The church has been through a lot. It has a long and storied history where we're coming around to get on the right track, and the congregation is standing with us and saying, yes, this is the direction we need to go. We've had multiple congregation members, some that don't come anymore. Some stopped coming because they just, for whatever reason, don't want to be in a fight, and they're just not willing to stand, but would say these men were not qualified to ever be in leadership. And the first qualification, and not to make any uh, judgments against anyone, but the first qualification to be an elder is, first of all, you must be born again. Jesus Christ came to pay for our sins and died for our sins on the cross, and we must repent and turn from our sins and turn to Christ and follow him with all of our hearts. He gives us a new heart, makes us a new creation, and that's the first and foremost qualification. And if we have that qualification, many of the other things will follow, such as being above reproach, having self-control, not being quick-tempered, being not being selfish, and in desire of sordid and greedy gain. And so it was recognized that the leadership that was in place here weren't biblically qualified to be there. And the church, for the most part, there's some that are not on the same page, but wants this to be a biblical church. In the meantime, in the midst of all this, not only were they voted out by the church congregation by a unanimous vote of all of the voting members present, that they were no longer members. The church also called a meeting. A motion was made. We followed the bylaws to do this so that they could vote to remove my interim title and make me the permanent pastor. So the church is on we've got some strong Christians that are standing with us and fighting with us and desire for this to be a biblical church. And some have had their friends tell them, with all that's going on there, why don't you just find another church? And those who are staying say, are you kidding me? We can't go anywhere. We're in this. This is where we have a biblical church, and this is what we're doing. We can't walk away. And so the church is united in this.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm really glad to hear it. My whole thinking is what's the end goal for Tom and Jack? Like, what are they hoping to even accomplish? Let's say they were to somehow weasel back in the elder status. I mean, that doesn't give them the authority, I would believe, to terminate your contract or to run the church how they see fit with that, board of directors in place. I just don't understand, what they're trying to gain from all this, other than disrupting what's going on at the church. Like, that seems to be their end goal, is just to cause disruption. Um, with maybe the hopes of getting you fired, thrown in there. But yeah, I don't understand their end goal, and what the Broward County Sheriff is getting out of helping them. Like I said, this in my experience, this seems to me that there's a friend somewhere involved that we don't know about
Mhm.
that's helping to facilitate the sheriff's interaction there. Um, it could be that they know one of the gentlemen. It could be one of the gentleman's grandchildren is married to you know Adam Halstead's grandchild. I mean, there's lots of separation there that could be occurring that we don't know about that could be tightening this up on their side. Um, and like you said, with the way the power structure is there at Brevard, I believe Gregory is still the sheriff there. Is that right?
Yes, he is.
Right, and I believe he came in under suspicious auspices anyway, and he hasn't really been welcomed, totally as the sheriff there. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding
Mhm.
him getting in the office, if I remember correctly. Um, I mean, there's a lot of issues already with the Broward County Sheriff's Office
Yeah,
ongoing.
he came into Sheriff Gregory Tony came into being sheriff, appointed by Governor DeSantis after the debacle of the Parkland shooting.
Right.
The Sheriff Israel was removed, and Gregory Tony was appointed by the governor. And then there were some things that, and I think after he was elected, and then there were some things that came to light that were of a questionable nature regarding Sheriff Tony. And our attorney, who you saw on the video, that was interacting with the police and asking them, "Hey, they're breaking in. I'm asking you to stop them." He's sent at least 8 emails to Governor DeSantis, and that many or more to Sheriff Tony. And the gist of first with Sheriff Tony was trying to get him to be involved. Do an investigation into this. Hofstein's direct supervisor cannot be the one conducting this investigation, which is what they've taken it away out of internal affairs and given it to his major. Uh, and
And that's another red flag right there.
that's right.
That's another red flag. Like, there's procedures set in place for reasons, and why this stuff is done the way it's done, the way it is. And so when a case like yours, you go to internal affairs to investigate, and all of a sudden it gets taken out of there. I mean, there's got to be some back scratching or something going on here. This doesn't happen. I can tell you that, if I do a crime and the sheriff's involved or whatever, none of this stuff occurs, right? Like, the captain don't come out, internal affairs don't stop talking to me. There's definitely something somewhere. Maybe somebody's got something on the captain. I mean, all this stuff is possible, and it's stuff that I've seen time and time again throughout the nation, where somebody has something on this guy, so he allows this to happen or doesn't allow this to happen. And, later on it's found out, and, all these things such as that.
Mhm.
Um,
We so in addition to the governor and the sheriff, we've contacted the Florida Department of Law Enforcement as well as the Attorney General. We've had responses from the Attorney General and the FDLE. Both of their responses were, "There's not anything we can do unless the governor directs us to." So it's got to go through Governor DeSantis. Uh, Florida Department of Law Enforcement said that sheriffs in Florida have a lot of power, and the only way FDLE can get involved is either being asked to by the sheriff or being given a directive by the governor. And we have that. So our attorney asked, "Say, can you send that to me in writing?" And so he emailed him that, and then started sending emails to the governor, trying to get the governor to uh, direct an investigation by FDLE. With Sheriff Tony, he said, "If you want a fair investigation, because this purported investigation is a sham, then you should order an investigation to be done independently by the FDLE." And so far there's been no response to that.
Yeah, it's always the hurry up and wait with the government.
Mhm.
It's they hurry up and take our taxes, but when we need something done, there's never a timely response. There's never a timely manner. And I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have. It's all about who you know. It boils
Mhm.
down to specifically who you know. And I've had people that live in the hills of Calabasas, California. Some of the richest people you can imagine, and they still have their rights violated, and are still subject to misdeeds by the state. Um, so this is definitely something I think. Now, has any mainstream media taken an interest in your case? Has anybody tried to reach out to them to
We
try to get
have
them to cover it? What was the response from those guys?
crickets. No response. We've sent it to local media. We've sent it to national media. There's been no response.
That doesn't shock me because part of the reason I started to be what I consider an independent journalist, although a lot of people that don't like what I do would not consider me a journalist, but is the fact that um, in order for mainstream news media to survive, to get their exclusives, to get the calls from the police to show up on a scene, is that they have to agree to show the government and the police in a favorable light, right? So if they're showing the government in a non-favorable light, then they stop getting the exclusives, right? They stop
Mhm.
getting the interviews with the mayor, and they stop getting the calls to the five-car wreck on I-95 or whatever it has been out that they need in order to put this filler material out, because none of the stuff is really news that we get today on our mainstream news channels. It's opinions. It's for accidents wise, I guess you can consider it news, but um, it's just terrible how that's going on when the first focus should be government and how the government's behaving in our name with our money, because that's what they're doing. They're behaving using our names and our money. I feel responsible for the way you're being treated because my taxes are helping to pay those guys come in and enforce their will on your guys' church, and that it sickens me. Hold on, I got my stop it, puppy. There's nothing underneath there. Digging in my chair like there's gold down there, or buried a bone or something. Um, so it just it really sickens me. And as again, it's part of the reason why I do what I do. So I'm in a field where either people love me or they hate me, and it's based on how much of an influence the government's had in their lives and how much they actually question the government.
Mhm.
If people question the government and they know that the government's not a benign creature that's just there to you know paint rainbows and give you know income tax checks or whatever, then they realize that I'm doing good work. But if they think the government's for us, by us, and they'd never hurt any citizens, and they're always looking out for our best interests, then they hate what I do, because they see what I do is and I hear it in my chats and stuff all the time. They say, well, you're out there harassing hardworking people, because you're in there filming them while they're working, and I say, well, this is part of our civic duty,
Mhm.
just like in the church you have duties that you have to perform regardless of anything else, right? Just like you said, to be an elder, you have to be reborn, right? There's no other option. This is the
Right.
way it is. And that's the same way for citizenship and in a free country. Part of that duty is keeping an eye on our government, right? And for so long we've allowed the mainstream media to keep an eye on our government, and then all of a sudden we wake up one day and we're $30 trillion in debt, and nothing looks like it did when we were kids, and the government's just acting out of control, and we're like, well, how did this happen? Where'd we go wrong? Well, we went wrong by allowing the state to watch over the state,
Mm-hmm.
Be the same thing as allowing the mafia to overwatch the mafia. You know what I mean? Basically,
Mm-hmm. Right.
because yeah, these
You
people
know,
that want power.
right. And, I mean, with what's happened and happening to us, uh, this would be, it's an egregious act, even if it were not happening to a church. For the sheriff's office to go into a business and tell them who their president and CEO were, because they used to be the president or the CEO 6 months ago. And so you got to give him the keys and he's coming back in here. Well, that's egregious enough. But then you couple that on top of the fact that this is happening to a church. Now you have First Amendment rights, you have the separation of church and state, which was put in place not to keep religion, keep Christianity out of the government, but to keep the government out of the church's business. And
That's it.
and so I mean, this wouldn't be stood for if it happened to a business. And but then you put that on top, put the church and the religious aspect on top of it, and it just makes it all the worse.
And they're opening themselves up for liability, because again, if this was my church and I was a part of this church, I would definitely be pushing for the church to file litigation against the sheriff's department and against Tom and Jack for destruction of property, violation of the First Amendment, the right to religion, because all these things, they're tying in, they're disrupting your business of worship by doing these acts, and again, there's no clear cut end game for them. Any way they look at it, why would you want to be an elder of a congregation that has voted you out?
Mm-hmm.
That's like being part of a clubhouse that no one likes you in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't go to a restaurant where everybody hated my guts, or not, maybe not hated my guts, that's a strong word, but didn't like me and felt that I was not responsible enough to be in the capacity that I was in. Um, it just it's weird.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it even weirder because we can tell there's a connection, right? Because these things, they just don't happen like this, right? The
Yeah.
internal affairs shutting off its investigation, not contacting you, these heavy hitters coming out to your place talking about big pictures for us. Um, again, the sheriff not responding. Um, yeah, I mean it's definitely more to it than meets the eye as far as the sheriff involvement goes. I'd like to try to find out more about that if I can. Like I said, I have some people down there. I'll see if they can uncover anything. Um, but I mean, I feel bad for you guys because again, I'm sitting here watching this while it's happening, and I can't believe that. I couldn't believe that was happening down here at my church. I couldn't believe it, and it's bringing it to a point, because
Mm-hmm.
again, if this is my church, I'm not going to let some guy who used to be an elder there, maybe, whatever, if I liked him or if I didn't like him, didn't matter. I'm not going to have him come to my church and be breaking windows and breaking down doors. I don't care what the sheriff says, right? I'm going to stand right in front of that window, and as soon as that guy touches me, that's a battery, right? And
Right.
unwanted touching in Florida is a battery. I'm going to stand right in front of that door. If you want to get through here, you're going to have to remove me. If such, it'll be a criminal charge, and then if they don't press criminal charges on them, then I'll have to defend myself, and we'll go
Mm-hmm.
from there. But um,
One
you
thing I
know,
want to even point out too is what the BSO has done is they have put the I guess you would say the onus or the obligation on us. And when we tell them they're trespassing, they need to be removed. Well, do you have any paperwork that says? Do you have a court order that says that they're trespassing? And well, no, you're asking for something that we don't have. Isn't it that shouldn't it be their responsibility to have a court order that says that they're not trespassing and for you to force them to come back in here? Would you want me to come to you? Could I come to your house and squat on your couch and then the police come and say, you can't remove him unless you have a court order that says he doesn't belong here. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they're completely baffled.
That's a great point, because again, I deal with trespassing laws all the time, because they always trespass me out of the public buildings. But being that the church is a private entity, it's just like Walmart or anything else. I mean, you don't even need a reason why you want somebody trespassed. I mean, you could, your whole congregation could show up for church Sunday morning. You can call the cops and have every one of them trespass, and you wouldn't even need to give them a reason.
Yeah.
That's how the trespass laws work. There's no obligation on the person that's got controlling interest of the property to show any reason or anything. You know what I mean? I just like my house, somebody's, walking in my yard, I call up the police, hey, get this guy gone. I don't have to show nothing. If this guy out there on my lawn says, oh, well, hey, I'm allowed to be here, then he needs to prove that. I don't have to prove that he doesn't need to be there. This is obviously my property. I'm in control of the property. I imagine you have your name on there somewhere as the pastor on the door, or, on a nameplate, probably in business cards. Matt, your name, Pastor, Jeremy, and I forgot your last name, Tatum.
Yes.
So I imagine that's on the business card, which would match your ID. You know what I mean? So it's obvious that you are in control of said property. That's it. There needs to be nothing more. I'm in control of this property. It's called a possessory interest. I have more of a possessory interest than this gentleman here. So, yeah, it's a strange case the way this is playing out.
Right. Yeah, and more than that, I would say it's not me, but the church. The church is in control of this property. I mean,
exactly.
I'm the spiritual leader. I'm not looking to control property, but
Right.
the church is, and the church has made it clear. The church has, not merely me. The church had the locks changed. The church doesn't want them here. The church says they're trespassing.
Right.
They left the church, and they revoked their membership when they filed lawsuits. And also in our bylaws says that any non-member that can be asked to leave and treated as a trespasser. It's very, very clear. And and I'll just say this regarding BSOs forcing their way in here. The only thing that slowed Hofstein down with what he wanted to do, because their end goal that day was for Tom to fire me and restrict me from being in the church offices or sanctuary. That was their end goal. The only thing that slowed him down is only because I think they were expecting us to roll over and just do whatever they said. And then we got our attorney on the phone, and that was when things changed. And that was when he said, well, they're just going to have to both be here and learn how to get along together. We've never had any disrespect for law enforcement. When they showed up that day, my attitude was great. They're reasonable. They're here to protect. They're here to serve. They're going to do what's right. I wasn't expecting to happen what happened that day. And it's now, and I want to say too, it's not changed my view of police officers, but I have no confidence whatsoever in our Broward Sheriff's Office, and especially the Deerfield District, because even when given the opportunity to do what's right, they've refused to do what's right. This would have been very easy in the beginning. All they had to do was say, you know what, we messed up. Lund, you're out of here. You can't come back. And that would have been the end of it. That's all we asked for. But now this has been going on since February 28th.
Right.
And they continue to dig their heels in. And even when it's clear that, and we're working on getting this out of the courts and getting this into Christian arbitration, which, the other parties have refused. And so we've had to file a motion to try to have a court, not a lawsuit. We don't want the court involved in the church business, but the court to uphold the church's bylaws that says this must go to Christian arbitration.
Right.
The resort to tactics just because former members won't submit to the bylaws that they put in place. It's just crazy all the way around.
Right. Either submit to the bylaws that you instituted or just leave the church and stop bothering them.
Right.
It's pretty cut and dry. And I want to make something clear too as well. You said, with the law enforcement, that's how a lot of people are. A lot of people, if you don't have interactions with law enforcement a lot, um, it's easy to think that they're always going to be on your side and they're always going to do the right thing. And I myself um, dislike bad law enforcement. Right? I
Hmm.
love good law enforcement. I love cops that uphold their oath to the Constitution, that uphold citizens' rights, and do the right thing. I know a lot of those guys. They email me with tips about bad guys in their department all the time, and people like me a lot of times, because we do watch the government, we do watch police, we get a bad name. People say, "Oh, you hate police or you hate the government or blah blah blah," but that's not the case. Specifically with me, I can't speak for nobody else, but with most of the people that I know that are involved in the situation that I do, we don't hate police officers. We hate bad police officers,
Hmm.
and we want to get them out. We want bad government out. We want good government in. Um, and it sometimes, again, the majority of citizens don't see that there's a problem because they have so little interaction with their government, right? Like nobody
Hmm.
goes and hangs out at City Hall, right? Unless you need a building permit, right? And nobody goes and has an interaction with the police every other day to see how they react to people in situations. So they don't realize it a lot, I do. So, I see a lot of the stuff that a majority of citizens don't see, and that you watch it on my videos. Um, for a lot of people, they watch it on my videos and they could see, and that's what the freedom of the press really is, and what it was instituted for back in the day was the right to watch over the government, because
Hmm.
as our founders knew, a tyrannical government can make you do anything, and the same thing with the Church of England. If you lived in England back then during the Revolutionary period, you went to the Church of England. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You didn't go to this church or that church or any other denomination church. You went to the Church of England, and that
Hmm.
was the bottom line. There was no freedom of religion. So, our government or our founders knew that, if left up to our own devices, because we're human, right? Got jealousy and greed and envy and all these human emotions and actions that we take that subvert even the best men with goodwill. Um, so it's a rigorous process to keep these guys accountable, because
Hmm.
again, if no one's watching, people tend to do things that they shouldn't do.
Hmm.
It's human nature again. Just like a criminal. If a criminal goes and gets into a bank every day and steals money and nothing happens, he's going to keep doing it. And the same
Hmm.
thing goes for our politicians. If they could take a backdoor deal one day and nothing happens, they'll take a backdoor deal the next day. And
Hmm. Yeah.
stuff like that occurs. So we can't hide our face and act like it doesn't exist, in the hopes that it doesn't occur to us, which, when it does happen, like here at the church, then we get a full dose of what reality really is for a lot of
Hmm.
Americans.
Hmm.
Um,
And what you just said just goes back to a previous point of that is our nature. That's our that we're fallen human beings, and what we need is a new nature. We need to be born again. We need to be a new creation, and just so the viewers understand this, we don't wish any harm or ill will toward Tom or Jack or anyone involved. Captain Hoffstein, we pray for them, and we pray that God would bring them. The Apostle Paul was persecuting the church. The Apostle Paul was dragging Christians to jail and looking on as Christians were being martyred. But God gave him a new heart, and he became the biggest missionary and proponent and preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we know that there's no heart beyond that. And so that's our prayer for them. We don't wish them ill will. We pray that God would bring them to the end of themselves and turn them to Jesus, and that they would be born again and follow him. That's our desire.
Yeah, to be right, to make stuff
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, Pastor Jeremy, I told you 45 minutes. I don't want to say I lied, but I've overstepped my time limit there. It's 53 minutes. I know you're a busy man. I don't want to keep you any longer than you're available to be, but what does it look like going forward for you guys now?
Now we're in a waiting pattern. We've gotten to a point where they've stopped trying to break in. There is one part of the church that's separate buildings that are unused by the church at the moment. There's a school that rents space, and so every Wednesday and every Sunday they show up there to I don't know what they do there, but it's totally disconnected from the church. And going forward, that's a minor victory. It's not even really a victory. They shouldn't be here at all, but that's what we're having to deal with because the sheriff's office won't deal with what the situation that they have created. And now we wait. We're waiting on motions for responses to the court, so that hopefully, prayerfully, by God's grace, this will be kicked out of the courts and have to go to Christian arbitration, and everything can be settled in Christian arbitration. One of the sad things is that the church has had to incur we personally have had to incur tens of thousands in legal fees that we should not. I mean, because of libelous and frivolous lawsuits that have been brought against us. And so we're looking forward to an end of that, to be done with attorneys and to be done with courts and to get arbitration done so the church can move forward as a church on mission for the gospel.
That's it, because that's your number one focus.
That's right.
All this other stuff is just taken away from your focus, which my feeling, if Tom and Jack were true men of God, they would just say, hey, you know what? All this is just flim flam. Let's go to Christian arbitration. If we're right, we're right. If they're right, they're right. It should be cut and dry. It shouldn't be no issue. But again, like we discussed, men, human nature, sometimes we don't act rational, and we could all use, like you said, a helping hand from the man above to steer us in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank you again, Pastor Jeremy. I definitely will keep up on this case. You got my number and my email address. So if anything develops and you'd like to come back maybe later and talk about it, we can do that. But if not, I'll just keep in touch with you, and I'll keep the viewers updated as everything goes along. And of course, I hope the best for you folks. I do get down there every once in a while, so maybe I'll stop in and visit you guys at your church one day.
Sounds good. That'd be great. And I want to say, we appreciate over the last several days, we've enjoyed watching your videos. Appreciate the work that you're doing, and appreciate you bringing light and attention to our situation here.
Absolutely, sir. I thank you. Like I said, that's my main focus, right? And I have a feeling that this was put into my heart by somebody to do this specific kind of work, because it's not without its own persecutions,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not without its own injustices that I've had to face. But I feel that this is something that's important, and that it needs to be done. And I just am uniquely situated to being able to do that. So, I appreciate everything. So, God bless you folks down there. I hope everything, of course, turns out for the best, which I don't see why it wouldn't. But you just never know,
Well,
So, but
thank
yeah,
you. May the Lord bless you. Appreciate it.
thank you, sir. Absolutely.